Don't rush to throw away that old piece of foam and leftover Coca-Cola. Just in a few seconds, you might see a trick that will surprise you. When you place these two seemingly unrelated items side by side, you'll see a completely different perspective. Things that are considered waste are not necessarily useless, but are sometimes just waiting to be transformed into a surprisingly creative idea. I'll take this discarded foam and cutting it into smaller pieces. It doesn't need to be too precise. Just cut it into tiny fragments as small as possible to increase the contact surface area. As you cut, you'll notice the foam becomes very light and easy to handle as it breaks apart. After shredding the foam into small pieces, I'll gather everything together to prepare for the next step. This is when the real surprise begins, as it gets combined with the leftover Coca-Cola. Next, I take a small plastic bowl and pour in some leftover Coca-Cola. Next, I add a small amount of acetone into the bowl. At this point, when you place the shredded foam into the mixture, you'll start to notice a very interesting effect. The foam no longer retains its original shape, but gradually shrinks, softens, and transforms into a more plastic-like substance. This is when the reaction becomes most visible, producing a result that few would expect just by looking at these two ingredients at first. After adding the foam, I'll cover the bowl tightly to minimize the evaporation of the acetone. This helps the solvent remain effective for longer and allows the foam to fully dissolve. For today's mixture, stirring by hand would take quite a bit of time and wouldn't be very consistent. So I'll make a simple DIY stirring tool to help by using materials I already have on hand. I can create a mixer that blends the mixture faster and more evenly without requiring too much effort. Silicone glue will be an essential ingredient in this mixture. I'll add a suitable amount to enhance adhesion and help the mixture become more flexible and durable once finished. Coming back to the foam mixture, you can now see that the foam is almost completely dissolved. From the initial light fragments, it has now transformed into a denser mass that is slightly flexible and noticeably adhesive. Next, I'll apply the silicone glue directly into the mixture I just created. I'll add it gradually while using a prepared stirring tool to mix everything evenly. As it's stirred, the components begin to blend together, forming a smooth, uniform mass with a certain level of elasticity. This is an important step that helps improve the overall quality and durability of the final product. Now I'll divide this mixture into 2 equal parts to make it easier to work with. I'm going to experiment with 2 different final results using the same base material. For the first portion of the mixture, I'll add a bit of red color to create a highlight. The type of color I'm using here is acrylic paint, as it blends easily and adheres well to mixture. As for the remaining portion of the mixture, I'll keep it as it is without adding any color. This way, it retains its natural appearance, creating a clear contrast when placed next to the red tinted portion. After mixing, I'll begin testing this mixture on 2 different surfaces, a piece of cardboard and a wooden board. For typical surfaces like these, I'll prioritize using the uncolored mixture by keeping it original color. The finished coating looks more natural and doesn't significantly alter the appearance of the material. For each surface, I'll divide it into 2 sections and apply the mixture to one half for easy comparison. One side will remain in its original state, while the other side will be coated with the mixture. Now I'll switch to the red tinted mixture to continue the test. Compared to the uncolored version, this one stands out much more. Next, I'll test it on a more challenging surface, a brick that has been covered with moss and has absorbed moisture over a long period of use. This surface is quite rough, damp, and uneven, with patches of moss firmly attached, making adhesion more difficult compared to wood or cardboard. In addition, I also have a small piece of fibro cement roofing tile, so I'll apply the mixture to the surface as well. This type of tile is quite hard and slightly rough, completely different from cardboard or wood, so it should give a more interesting test result. After letting it sit for a while, once the mixture is fully dried, you can clearly see a significant change. From its initial soft and sticky state, the coating has now become harder, more stable, and firmly adhered to the surface. As for the red coating on the brick's surface, after drying you can see that it doesn't develop a glossy finish like typical paint, but instead has a rather rough texture. The coating closely follows the brick's core structure, preserving its uneven details rather than completely smoothing them out. And now I'll show you the most remarkable feature of this mixture, its water resistance. Once the coating has fully dried, I'll drop some water directly onto the surface to test it. You'll notice that the water doesn't soak in immediately as it normally would. Instead, it tends to bead up on the surface and may even roll off when slightly tilted. This indicates that the coating has formed a protective layer that helps prevent water from penetrating the material. This is what makes the mixture more practical in real-world use, especially for surfaces that are frequently exposed to moisture. When comparing directly on the same brick, the difference between the two sides becomes very clear. On the uncoated side, water quickly soaks into the surface, causing the brick to darken almost immediately as it absorbs moisture. In contrast, on the coated side, the water hardly penetrates at all and instead stays on the surface, forming distinct droplets. When slightly tilted, these droplets can even roll off, showing that the coating acts as a protective layer that prevents water from seeping in. When spraying water onto the wooden surface, the difference between the two sides is very clear. On the uncoated side, the water quickly soaks into the wood, causing the surface to darken and spread along the grain. Within just a few seconds, the droplets almost completely disappear as they are absorbed into the material. Meanwhile, on the coated side, the water does not penetrate, but instead forms visible droplets on the surface. When more water is sprayed, it tends to slide off or pool together rather than spreading and soaking in. The surface largely retains its original color and does not darken like the untreated side. It's also worth noting that even under more extreme conditions, such as prolonged exposure to water or heavy rain, the coated surfaces remain largely unaffected. The protective layer continues to repel water, preventing it from soaking in and helping the material maintain its original condition. In contrast, untreated surfaces would quickly absorb moisture under the same conditions, leading to deeper saturation, discoloration, and potential long-term damage. This further highlights the durability and practical value of the coating in real-world environments. The final results are very clear. This mixture truly creates an effective water-resistant coating. On all the tested surfaces, the coated areas did not absorb water. Droplets either stayed on the surface or rolled off instead of penetrating inside. In contrast, the untreated surfaces absorbed water quickly, showed noticeable color changes, and became easily damp. This difference is not only visible to the naked eye, but also appears immediately during testing. This method is not only cost-effective, but also practical for everyday use, especially for storing old or neglected tools without the need for specialized chemicals or equipment.